Welcome to the Living Medicine podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sandy Newist, and this is Living Medicine, the podcast where I interview interesting and influential people in the psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy space, or the broad field of psychedelic medicine. And this show is sponsored by Living Medicine Institute, which is a business that I run, which has training, content, and resources for therapists and medical professionals who are interested in the developing field of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, with a current emphasis on ketamine. And we have our next retreat coming up in September. So if you're interested in that, please go ahead and check out livingmedicineinstitute.com. And I am delighted today to have Robert Falconer with me. And he was originally trained and worked with Richard Schwartz and published a book about IFS and unattached burdens, which is kind of what is going to be framing this particular talk. It's called The Others Within Us, Internal Family Systems, Porous Mind and Spirit Possession. And it quickly became a bestseller. And I will say it became a bestseller because it's really the only one of its kind. Prior to that, he co-authored Many Minds, One Self with Richard Schwartz. And since then has published When You're Going Through Hell, Keep Going. And his latest book, Spirit, a summary of many of the journals of his daily dialogues with spirit. So for the past 20 years or so, Bob has devoted himself full-time to IFS work, has done all of the IFS training. And what I know, because I know multiple people who've been in his consultation groups, is that this focus on what is really ancient wisdom traditions, ancient cultural traditions around different types of spiritual work has also really become an interest. So, and actually, I did it, as so many of you know, I did a podcast with Dick Schwartz a couple of years ago, and he's the one who actually sent me in Bob's direction. So I'm excited to be here. It feels like a full circle thing. So welcome, Bob.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And it's very near and dear to my heart because working in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and also my own personal experiences, I've seen this. I have lived experience with kind of atypical phenomena, things that don't fit within our cultural milieu. And I've witnessed this, I've experienced this, I've talked to lots of other people who do this. And my belief is that as we move more and more into psychedelic medicine and psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, we're going to see more and more of this. And we are actually seeing more and more of, again, whatever the word we're going to use, and we'll talk about all of that, but phenomena that don't fit into a Western version of culture. And, we're kind of taught to dismiss it. And yet, one of the things I got out of your book, really, which I love that you say right off the bat, is that more cultures than not throughout recorded human history have had a much more broad view of spiritual phenomena and therefore psychological phenomena. And so, I love that you are a voice for that. And so therefore, things that are difficult to explain in traditional and conventional Western frameworks. So, what I'm hoping that it's not whether one worldview is right and another is wrong, but how can we stay present, curious, culturally and personally humble, and really also therapeutically effective when our clients' experiences stretch beyond what we think we know? And how can we do a better job? So that kind of, brings us to this question, like just in general, what can these experiences teach us? How has your work with these experiences expanded your understanding of trauma and what it means to be human? And would that be an okay place for us just to kind of broadly land?
Well, I heard at least 20 questions.
Yes, you did.
So let me just start at the top and see how far we get.
Okay.
People have met inside their minds conscious agentic beings who are not from their own personal lifetime history. This has happened in almost every culture we have records of, all eras of history. And it can have hugely powerful effects on people for good or for ill. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor most often used to describe this is spirit possession. In the modern West, if you start talking about that, everyone's going to go, this guy's a whack job.
Right. Right. They do.
Whatever metaphor we use, we need to pay attention. This biopsychological dynamic is everywhere, and it's powerful in
Yeah.
people, very powerful.
Hmm.
So that's sort of where I start.
I love
And I
that.
want to say, we sort of say this, oh, that's pathology, that's hallucination and, all that kind of stuff. We're the weird ones. I once mentioned third world cultures, and they said, no, that's completely backwards. You in the West are 20%. You're the weird, white, industrialized, educated, developed, and rich.
Right.
Yeah. We're the weird. The rest of the world knows this stuff is real.
Right. I
And I
mean,
think
go ahead.
something William James said a long time ago, and I'm a big fan of William James. He said, the greatest hindrance to any scientist, the most damaging belief they can take in is that certain phenomena are impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
we take those in all the time. And it
Totally.
really poisons our thinking and makes us blind, willfully blind.
Mhm. Well, and then we have, hundreds or I don't know how long years of really weaponizing those kinds of things against each other too. Right? Somebody's possessed, somebody's, demonic, somebody needs an exorcism, somebody gets burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials, somebody gets their head chopped off for not believing. So there's been, there's a lot of cultural pressure to conform to this norm that these things don't exist or exist within only this westernized framework.
I think the worst and most destructive pressure comes from the modern academic community.
Hmm. So say
Not,
more about that.
well, they say people are nuts who believe this. They totally pathologize it. They
Hmm.
make them bad or wrong. And I think, for example, the whole Hearing Voices network has done a tremendous amount of good.
Mm.
Used to be 20 years ago or so, if you heard a voice, that was enough to get you diagnosed as schizophrenic.
Right?
Hearing voices is normative. It's
Yeah.
normal human behavior. It's normal human experience. They did this study, for example, in couples who live together more than 45 years and one spouse dies.
Yeah.
80% of the surviving spouse hears the voice of the deceased.
Interesting. That's
That's
a really
normal,
interesting
gang.
study.
That's
Right.
not pathology. Come on. Hello. I know it's incredibly inconvenient and unfortunate for the ruling um, paradigm.
Right.
It happens all the time. And very often, I think most of the time, it benefits people.
Right.
Now that statement gets me in a lot of trouble. So I want to back that up a little bit before I just dive into the places where I know everyone's going to think I'm nuts. Roland Griffiths did these studies, and to me, he's like what the gold standard or one of the gold standards of psychedelic research. I mean, he was just what a wonderful researcher and so careful with his statistics.
Uh-huh.
He studied when people having psychedelic experiences met conscious agentic beings,
Mm.
aka spirits, or whatever you want to call them. Conscious agentic beings sounds nice and academically
It does.
respectable.
That is not a term that I've ever heard before, but I do like it. Can you
Yeah,
actually define agentic?
means has control.
Oh,
It,
okay.
it, it has a direction. And you
Okay.
can actually define this very precisely. And it's related to intelligence. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Michael Levin.
No.
He's a biologist, and I think he's going to go down as the Einstein of biology. The
Really?
work he is doing is absolutely mind-boggling,
Uh-huh.
mind-boggling. And he has very precise, measurable definitions of agency.
Yeah.
And one of them goes back to William James, and it was
Uh-huh.
William James's definition of intelligence. If you have an organism that's going toward a goal, like a blastomere, the fertilized egg
Mm-hmm.
wants to become an embryo, and you interrupt that path,
Yeah.
Can this organism create new paths around the interruption? That was his definition of intelligence. That's
Huh.
also a definition of agency. If
Mm-hmm.
something can do that, it's got some agency.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is mathematically measurable. It's
As
not like
opposed to just like bumping into the same thing over and over again. I mean, that actually makes, I mean, it sounds like duh, but like really, like if it didn't have any agency or intelligence, it would just keep bumping in or it would just stop.
yeah, and that would be so. This guy Levin has, for his work in his lab, has developed a way to make this measurable.
Hmm.
So conscious agentic beings.
Mm-hmm.
When Griffiths was studying this, he did these big online surveys of people who'd met them with psychedelics containing DMT, which is, psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT itself.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many people, thousands and thousands of people responded saying they'd met conscious agentic beings who they could have a conversation with. It's not just some process or energy. It's a person.
Well,
And
and then the commonalities amongst the reports too, like that
yeah, let me finish this, Sandy.
Sorry.
This
Okay,
is
go ahead.
important. 80% of those meetings were positive.
Hmm.
80%. So overwhelmingly, this is good.
Yeah.
The most common descriptors were wise person, old woman of the jungle, mother ayahuasca, all these really wonderful, benevolent beings.
Yeah.
20% were difficult and sometimes horrendous.
Hmm.
But I think we have this very warped view that most of these meetings are negative, largely thanks to Hollywood and some other, also a lot of frightened academics.
Well, and it's interesting because even I've wondered about this. Like I spoke to Dr. Roman Politsky and a couple episodes ago, and he's actually doing a study of adverse events. And we talked a little bit about this, but not from the perspective of they're all bad, but rather, I think the term he used was ontological shock. Like what happens when you have these experiences and then
Yep.
there's no place to integrate and there's no place to land, which is something I really appreciate about what you're doing, putting yourself out on the front lines, because when people kind of discover you, as I have, then you're like, oh, okay. I'm not as much of a weirdo as I thought.
Ontological shock is a great phrase.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good phrase. And I think one of the problems with the modern Western academic way of dealing with this, a lot of these experiences, you could have this experience, and if you had a container that could receive this, it would be a positive experience.
Right.
But if you go, oh no, this must be pathology, this means my brain's broken, that's going to turn the same experience into something really negative.
Yeah.
That is a kind of ontological shock. And the origin of pathology out of this is not the experience, it's the failure to have a container to receive the experience.
Yeah. So can you say more about that? Because I have also, I mean, that's been my experience as well, like experiences I've had. And then you try to talk to other people and either they turn it back on you like there's something wrong with you, or they look at you all weird, or some version of that gets reflected.
Yeah, write you off.
Right. Where you're just like, this was, so.
Yeah, I haven't had a few in a few months, but I used to get a lot of clients who were highly psychic, young people. And this one woman, for example, from a small town in the Midwest said, Bob, when I walk down the street, I can see the dead people and I can hear their conversations as clearly as I hear the living. I know who's who, but I experience this. And she says, I don't dare tell my therapist even because she'd lock me up.
Right. Yeah.
And that's true. And that's terribly sad. There's nothing wrong with that young lady. She has a gift. She has, but there's something wrong with us.
Right. I mean, I spent a couple years, really a long time, but directed a couple years studying with Malidoma Somé from Africa and kind of studying African indigenous spiritual traditions. And his take was that if you're born in the village and everybody's been initiated, which means your eyes are open to this way of being in the world, and you begin to have these experiences, there are people in the village who mentor you, and it's recognized as a gift or it's recognized as a unique sensitivity, and you're kind of like funneled, you're good at this, so you go and study with these people, and it's all normalized and recognized as an essential part of the human condition, whereas we just don't have that.
Not only don't we have that, we actively destroy people who have these experiences,
Right.
attack them, give them very destructive meds, label them as crazy, sometimes lock them up, terrify them, tell them your brain is broken, your brain is broken.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah. I mean, I remember in graduate school reading, I got my PhD in clinical psych at Penn State and reading R.D. Laing, like a cultural view
Mhm.
of schizophrenia, essentially would, that was the first time I'd been introduced to the premise that maybe the environment is actually wrong. That, if we lived in a culture where this was celebrated or created, or there was an opportunity for things to come through and that it was just treated as normal, then it's not actually a problem.
Well, I think sometimes it still is a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
some people, sometimes I hate people going on long-term meds, but I think sometimes that's the best you can do.
Right.
And I really don't like that. I was talking to a guy who's a psychiatrist at Harvard, and he said, "Oh, I love all the things you're saying, Bob, but some people are absolutely not motivated to do any inner work. And for them, the best thing we can do is get them on meds so they're stable and not a danger to themselves or others."
Well, that's
And
an
I thought, I
important
hate what this
distinction.
man is saying, but he's right. You
No, I
know?
mean, I can see that, right? Because the reality is also we do live in the modern world. And like there isn't a place for that to land, at least in our culture. Not really.
Well, there
So,
could be. It's not, I don't think it's that impossible.
right.
I don't think we're that far away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you kind of a little bit more about your own journey. Like, so I'm just curious, was there kind of a pivotal client or a pivotal experience of your own that changed you from following more traditional IFS into, these experiences that really challenge our existing understandings of things?
Yeah, yeah, there was definitely one client.
Hmm.
I knew I'd done all the trainings. I hung out with Dick a lot, and I'd been on staff many, many times. And I knew, what they call them. They originally called them critters, which I think is a much better name. I think UB is, I don't like that name at all.
Uh-huh.
But unattached burdens, that's what IFS wants you to call
Yeah.
them these days. And I knew about them and basically how to deal with them. And I was supervising a triad in a training, a level one, I think.
Hmm.
And the woman had something in her that I did not think was part of her.
Mm.
And the guy who was, the therapist learning to be an IFS therapist was getting totally boggled. So I asked him, "Can I take over this session?" And he said, "Please."
Yeah, sure. Bye.
Yeah, yeah, please. And what she was seeing in her inner world was a bloodshot eyeball with legs that was unbelievably critical of her.
Mm.
You're a
Mhm.
worm, you're disgusting, you need to blah, 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 and on and on and on. Now, everybody has self-critical parts,
Right.
at least everybody I've ever met, but they always have a good intention.
Hmm.
So the first thing you do when you think there's something in there that might not be part of a person is you start, well, what's good about that? What's good about that? And
Hmm.
it would say stuff, well, that means she'll have a small life. Well, what's good about her having a small life? And we just drill down layer after layer after layer. There was no good intention anywhere.
Huh.
It was just, I'll keep her small. I'll keep her tiny, you
Oh.
know. And
And what was it? What was its intent then? Like, was it trying
I'll
to
get, I'll get
get
there.
the
I'll get
hostage?
there.
Okay. All right.
Um, so the next thing you do is you just have the person ask the thing directly. Are you a part of me?
Hmm.
Wouldn't answer the question. And then ask again. And you wish I was a part of you, or I've been around. It didn't, it was a lawyer. It was really good at non-responsive answers.
I
And
mean,
then,
I'm kind of, but not really. I mean, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. And then after a while, it said to me, it had her say to me, "You're supposed to be a teacher. That's a really stupid question. Don't you have anything smarter to ask?" And I sort of smiled and said, Might be stupid, but it's simple. Are you a part of her?
So you just keep, no matter what, you just kind of like mirror it and then just go back to the question.
Yeah. And then after a while, it said, no, I'm not a part of her. I'm a much more glorious being, and I'm going to squash you like a worm the same way I'm going to crush her.
Oh, interesting.
Hi.
Did that
Hi.
did that alarm you in any way?
For some reason, no.
Uh-huh.
I felt relieved to know who it was. And we were able, using very simple tools, to get it out of her system.
Uh-huh.
And I closed up the practice group and debriefed them in a somewhat rational way. And I went into the staff meeting, and my body temperature went down. I started shaking and feeling weird. And I
Oh,
was really irritable. And
yeah.
I really was insulting to some of my old friends. And I had to apologize later. And I
Okay.
just thought, I'm going to ignore this. This didn't happen. Whatever this was, we'll just pretend that didn't happen.
Oh.
And then she starts sending me letters from the airport on her way home,
Uh-huh.
emails.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm seeing colors I've never seen before.
Oh.
And I can see the light of the divine in people. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've triggered a major manic episode. And visions of malpractice were dancing in my head.
I mean, were you literally thinking that? You're just like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
yeah. I was going,
now
oh,
it's
this
becoming
doesn't,
manic.
this
Okay.
is, yeah. But
Uh-huh.
then she sent me another email that changed my life.
Okay.
She said, Bob, I didn't tell you this. When I was a young woman, I tried to kill myself many times, and I was institutionalized many times. When I tried to tell people back then about the non-human inside of me, they gave me electroshock and terrible drugs. You're
Oh.
the first human being to ever believe me, and you have changed my life.
Oh.
And then I went, oh, F. Now I can't ignore this. It was like,
Well, I
no.
totally get it. Like you can't. Like there's like, okay,
Yeah.
like I guess if not me, then who?
Yeah, and I was already like in my early 60s, so I didn't need a career,
Yeah.
which really helped.
Well, that does help.
Yeah, and I followed her for some 15 years since then, and
Uh-huh.
she did blossom inside and out. So it really was a life transforming experience. Oh.
Interesting. Huh.
And then the word got out that, oh, Bob's interested in this. And almost every other IFS therapist didn't want to have anything to do with it.
How come?
Well, it scares the hell out of people. It's very uncomfortable, doesn't fit in the worldview, you know,
Uh-huh.
and all. So I got a ton of referrals.
Like, lo and behold, now this is my career.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Just when I
did,
thought I was going to destroy my career, turns out.
yeah, but yeah, it didn't do my reputation any good. But a lot of people sort of come, hey, can you help this one? But
Interesting. It's
yeah,
interesting because when I did the interview with Dick Schwartz, he was I mean, he was speaking pretty openly about it, but I'm aware of the fact that that wasn't always the norm within the IFS community. Like,
no, he did not want me to publish my book, and he
mm,
worked really hard to make that not happen. But then
mm,
when he finally read the whole text and realized I was going to publish it, he did write a foreword. So we're sort of back on okay terms.
good. I mean, at the time, in all sincerity, a couple years ago, when he was pointing me in your direction, he was actually quite complimentary and quite humble about it.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very, I mean, he didn't have to bring it up and he did. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, so, okay. So just to kind of, if I've got it correct, and you and I have talked before, so I'm also summarizing, we've got the self, we've got parts, and then we've got critters, unattached, burdened, epistemic, what is it again? The conscious epidemic, not, it's not epidemic. What is the word that you used for these beings? Conscious,
Agentic.
agentic. Okay, great. And so we've got these three broad categories. Is that right?
Well, there's more. And
Okay.
one that's super important, legacy burdens,
Uh-huh.
because people can get self and parts. Even that's a struggle. And
Yeah.
it's less of a struggle than it used to be. But then there's also legacy burdens,
Mm-hmm.
things that we inherit from ancestors. And there is a whole hard science behind this now.
Yeah.
There's the science of epigenetics. There's the wonderful DS Ressler experiment. There's all of Rachel Yehuda's stuff on the Holocaust survivors and their
Mm.
cortisol chemistry being different down to the third and fourth generation after. So we know this happens, and there's hard science behind it.
Yeah.
And these are things that exist inside of people's minds that are not from their own personal lifetime.
Oh, interesting. Uh-huh.
So that cracks open the door.
Uh-huh.
And then you start looking at that, and we know this is real. You can do it in rats. And that's our culture's standard of
Anything
reality.
you can do in a rat.
That's real. Humans, who cares? But rats. So you can do it in rats. So even the most rationalistic, skeptical person, pretty much if you just talk to them for a while about all the evidence around legacy burdens, they go, yeah, that's real.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something, and then you can keep opening the door.
So what does a legacy burden look like that is different? What's different about a legacy burden, and how would one know that they were looking at, being with, hanging out around a legacy burden?
Okay, good question. It's something that happened to one of your ancestors that's still having a profound emotional effect on you.
Mm-hmm.
And the classic example is the Holocaust. The
Mm-hmm.
children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors have all sorts of stuff that's different in them
Right.
from the experience of the Holocaust
Mm-hmm.
that their ancestors had that they never had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it's okay with you, I'll go into the DS Ressler experiment because it makes it
Sure.
so clear.
Yeah.
DS is a psychologist at Emory, and Ressler is a MD at Harvard. It's with an R, not a W, if you're going to check my facts.
All right.
Um, Diaz had this idea. He came up in the poor Hispanic neighborhoods, and he realized mental illness and addictions ran in families. And he
Mm-hmm.
thought maybe there could be something more than just behavioral transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So he designed what I think is a totally brilliant way to test this. He took male rats and exposed them to a relatively pleasant chemical aroma, smells sort of like some kind of flower,
Mm-hmm.
and paired that with electrical shock until they got a reliable startle response to the odor. Classical conditioning, right? Then he took sperm from the male rat, impregnated a female rat who had never met the male rat, who had never smelled this chemical, and impregnated her. When her pups were old enough, they tested them, and a large number of them had this startle response.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
Everything I was trained in, high school, college, graduate school, said that's absolutely impossible, and anyone who believes that's a nut job. But it happens, gang.
Right. Yeah.
That would be a legacy burden. Something could happen to your great Aunt Martha that you never heard about that could be
Mm-hmm.
resonating in your psyche and causing you to have powerful emotional reactions, like a startle response.
Interesting. So, do you have an example of that? Like what does that look like in real life? Like with a client that you've had, or what might somebody like myself who's doing psychedelic therapy kind of encounter with
Mhm.
somebody? What might that look like?
Let me try and think of a good example. Um, okay, I got one, and it comes from the IFS world.
Hmm.
In the UK, they used to do many of the IFS trainings in a building that had been a cancer hospital in the 30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. And some people, oh, no, this isn't really a legacy burden. I don't want to do that one. Um,
Would that be more like a UB kind of situation?
yeah. So some of the nasty stuff from those deceased cancer patients got into the people in the trainings.
Mm-hmm.
This a guy I know in Europe had like a great aunt who he had never met who committed suicide.
Yeah.
He would have these suicidal thoughts come out of nowhere that didn't seem connected to anything,
Uh-huh. Oh,
and fairly strong.
interesting. Okay. And they would just kind of come out of nowhere And suddenly it would like take over and it would be really intense. And he's like, I'm actually not like, I'm not really suicidal. Like these are just
Well,
thoughts that are seemingly coming out of nowhere.
yeah, and in IFS land, we work with suicidal parts, assuming they have a good intention, which they usually do, and
Mhm.
and usually it's I can get this person out of intolerable pain. I'm the last line of defense,
Yeah.
and this thing didn't have any good intention.
Huh.
Not for him. Didn't really care about him.
So the legacy burdens also don't necessarily have a good intention.
No.
They're not here to help. They're not like ancestors. It's not like ancestral medicine that your
This
ancestors
is
are here
this
on
is
the
the
other
this is
side to
the
help.
dark side of our ancestral medicine.
Oh,
There
interesting.
are also ancestral blessings,
Uh-huh.
or I think Dick calls them heirlooms.
Yeah. Interesting. Because some of my teachers often refer to calling in the ancestors the well and healed ones.
Yeah.
you know,
And there's
like
some that are not
specifically
so.
excluding, right? Specifically
There's some that
excluding those that
are not happy campers at all.
right? Yeah, well, so okay, so let's switch gears a little bit if you don't mind into kind of, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. Like, you know, you and I have talked a little bit and I know you have, strong opinions about this, but how does this become, I mean, this is great. How does this become, more so or specifically relevant to, therapists that are working with ketamine and other psychedelic medicines? Does it change the way we sit? Does it change the questions we ask? Does it change the way we think about healing? Like, how is this relevant and important?
Well, I hope what it does, the number one thing I hope it does is remind us all that we're all basically beginners and we don't know nothing. And
Which
that
is something that it has done for me. Like, oh my God, okay.
yeah, oh my God, nothing to TF, you
Right,
know?
right.
Yeah. And, William James said this wonderful thing, the worst possible thing any scientist can believe, because it destroys their ability to do science, is the belief that anything is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have so many of those hammered into our head. We don't even realize they're there. They're just kind
Yeah.
of built into the woodwork and we don't see. So that
Mm.
when one of your people during a psychedelic session starts having a conversation with some being,
Yeah.
don't pathologize that.
Mm-hmm.
Accept it, encourage him, help him have a good conversation, you know, help him evaluate whether or not this thing has, good intentions for him. And, that's classically called discernment.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it would be helping that person build a container
Mm.
so that people can have that kind of experience and benefit from it instead of becoming terrified and going, oh my God, my brain's broken. I need to be on meds forever.
Right. So how do you recommend that we help to build a container for that? Like if we're,
First, number one, normalize it.
oh, mm-hmm,
This happens to people all the time.
mm-hmm,
That's one thing I love about the ayahuasca world. So many people talk to Mama Ayahuasca.
right. It's
That
true.
is normal in that world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the
And-
beings that come along with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just say, this is, like that line I gave about this being a basic biopsychological dynamic that humans have had forever, as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean your brain's broken. And there's actually a lot of wisdom and growth you can get from having and developing these kinds of internal relationships.
Hmm. Like what? What do you think what kind of wisdom and growth can that bring? I know it's obviously that's a really broad and it would be individualized, but in general, what do you see that we can gain from that?
People can learn how to have and cultivate a personal, direct encounter with spirit and
Mm-hmm.
forces that are far greater than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to believe that people don't heal without that, especially not from major trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, 12 steps has known this for a long time now. You don't heal without turning it over to higher power.
Right? That's true.
But I think when people start having these personal, interactional, relational, ways of being with these conscious agentic ones they meet inside themselves, that is a doorway to profound personal spiritual experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most of the time, domination structures hate this,
Right.
absolutely hate it. Churches too. Churches don't want you to have your own path.
No, there's
They want to monopolize it.
uh-huh. Right.
And I think people who do have these kinds of connections, they can't be sold a bill of goods. They can't be convinced that they need to buy a bunch of garbage and be in debt their whole lives. They can't be sucked into hating half the people on the planet. You know, they have I think of it as people who can develop this kind of spiritual connection. They become like those big, long seaweeds that are well connected to the floor. Huge storm comes along, and the seaweed turns that into these beautiful waves. You know, it's fine with the storm.
Right.
So yeah, I think developing this kind of connection to our depths and is profoundly healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think our minds are way vaster than we have any idea, and that we in the West have been encouraged to ignore this totally.
Mm-hmm.
And we start opening up to this world. It's vast, it's huge. We're beginners. You know, we're all begin. I like to say that even the brightest of people on the planet are really infants in diapers. And most of us are going around with diapers on, and many of us, our diapers are loaded and don't smell so good.
Uh-huh. Well, it's interesting because I've heard you say before, curiosity over certainty. Like, and this is actually something independent of this, but maybe related to my own work in this area personally is like I've been kind of like kind of dialed into the concept of rightness and really how problematic that is, especially in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, because like who can claim rightness? Like, so kind of like, how do we kind of move a field forward in a both like scientific and human and curious way and have enough rightness to kind of like claim a lane, but not get so attached to that we don't stay curious. Like, I just, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, one of the rules that is very practical and pragmatic, I think, is learn your client's language. Do not impose your own.
Mm-hmm.
Learn your client's ideology, their methodology, their mythology. Learn it, study it, ask them questions about it, be curious about it, and then operate within that.
Mm.
And there is no need whatsoever for us to impose our ideology on anyone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Milton Erickson, you know, the hypnotherapist and psychiatrist from the 20th century. And there was once one of the great stories about him. He was the psychiatrist on an inpatient ward, just got moved there. And there was a guy who they'd get out in the hallway and they'd stand him there and he'd just stand facing forward and he'd talk word salad all day. You
Huh.
know, stuff that sounds like language but has absolutely no
Right.
meaning. And
Right.
he'd been doing this for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's all they could do with the guy. Get him out of bed, get some food in him. He'd talk word salad. They'd totally isolated in his own world. So Erickson goes up there and stands beside him and sort of gets curious. And then he starts writing down some of the word salad. And then he sort of learns how to speak word salad. And then he goes next to the guy and stands shoulder to shoulder with him, staring in the same direction, and starts talking word salad back and forth with him. The second or third day, the guy turns to Erickson and goes, "Cut it out, Doc," and then snaps back into his word salad.
Awesome.
Just by learning that guy's language, having that basic respect, he broke through a decades-long total isolation.
Right.
We need to have the basic respect to learn people's language and mythology. And
Right.
that's something that comes up big time in medicine work. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something you can do. I mean, it's not, this is, you know.
So it's something you can do. Kind of back to this idea about, we build a container. So we learn people's language, we learn their ideologies. I know, what I've learned from you before is to be welcoming and curious, non-pathologizing. Mhm. And so if I'm working with somebody and I'm doing the best I can to use their language and to be with them, and, you know, I do a lot of work with ketamine or even, one of the longer
Mhm.
sacred plant medicines where we have a longer period of time. Like, what else can a good clinician do? What can we be watching for? What are some questions that we might be
Okay, I
asking?
know you. I know you probably won't like this because most clinicians don't get the H out of their way.
Mhm. Okay. But how do I do that? I mean, like, obviously I don't like leave the room. So how do I
No, you
join and
sit,
engage
sit,
with
sit,
and be
sit
with?
there, sit there and make notes
Uh-huh.
and be in self with them. If you're in self with them, it resonates. It gets through. You don't need to do anything. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of clinicians who are sitting with people doing trips, their active manager, self-like therapist parts get up and say, "Oh, I need to be doing something here."
Yeah.
No, that is an anxious manager, and it will. When you're in your anxious manager, that's what you're spreading in the world, anxiety. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a self, if you're really centered in self and are really calm, that will spread into the client you're working with. And even more so when they're on psychedelics. There was one woman who was giving MDMA in the Seattle area. And
Mm-hmm.
she would get people up in the middle of their MDMA experience, say, sit in that chair, look me in the eyes, and, impose her dialogue on them.
Right.
I thought that was gross malpractice,
Mm-hmm.
totally inappropriate. And she was training others to do this.
Interesting. Huh.
And a lot of people are doing stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I think that's really, really wrong-headed and arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm in trouble, right, Sandy?
No, I mean, I'm honestly sitting here being like, I think that would be a lot to get somebody up. But what about talking during the session? Because I am obviously like kind of defending my own approaches. Like, I'd be like, I could see how not doing that, but what about this? Like,
Yeah, it's
you know,
sometimes, but a little bit and really respectful. And, if somebody asks something of me, I'm right there. But, usually I won't impose anything.
mm,
I know the MAPS trainings, and they got some trouble for this. Most of the work's in the preparation and the integration.
for sure.
And once the medicine is really strong, we get out of the way and let their inner healing intelligence do the work.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
even in the session, the work for the therapist at the beginning and at the end. And I think we really need to have the faith in that inner healing intelligence. And people do have that.
Right. No, I agree with that. So I know you always get asked this, but I kind of want to get back and make sure we have a little bit of time spent on that how to's. And this is pretty near and dear to my heart because I've actually seen this a number of times. And like here's an example, like where I actually had a client and we had been working together for a while. This was a medicine session. We'd done preparation, we'd done integration, and it became very clear to me. And I'm more like IFS informed, like I'm not IFS certified, but it became very, very clear to me that there was a part that was extremely mean and very, very critical and was actually driving this person like into kind of workaholism and in exploring it had like a soldier like a prison like kind of quality. And kind of like I was like just doing my like very best to be like, what did they say I'm supposed to do? How do I tell that this is a part versus like a UB or, I don't know. And I kind of, blundered my way through it and I did the best I could at that time. And I'm pretty sure that it was not a part, and the client themselves, after working with it for a bit, was also pretty sure that it wasn't a part. And not that long after we did that work, the person sort of they missed it. They kind of called it back in. So it's been this ongoing journey with this person. And I mean, I'm quite certain that that's what this was. And that's the most obvious, but I have multiple examples that I could share, as do you. So, in that situation, and I think more and more people are going to see this or at least be curious. So if we're starting from a place of curiosity, Right. Somebody's like,
Great place to start.
right. Somebody's kind of talking, oh, yeah, it's like as if I've got this part that's just like talking to me and it's really mean. And,
Mhm.
it's just like, and I can feel it in my body. I'm really tense to it. It's just kind of, I don't like it. Like, where do you go
Ask,
from there?
ask it what its intention is and what
Oh,
it needs.
mm-hmm.
What's your intention? What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And uh, if it's a part, if you keep asking, well, like a suicidal part, I need to get her off the planet. Well, what's good about getting her off the planet? And you keep going. Eventually, it will be, if it's a part, that way I can stop her pain.
Oh, okay.
If it's not a part,
Need.
eh, you keep going down and down and down, and you'll get to something like, well, that means I win.
Oh, interesting.
No good intention in there anywhere.
Ah,
And then you just start asking the thing directly. Ask it if it's a part of your system. Ask it if it's a part of your system. And we don't need to fight these things. It doesn't have to be like exorcism deliverance movie style.
mm-hmm.
More and more, I think these things are lost and suffering horribly, and they've just attached to people out of their own desperation and lostness. And I treat them with kindness. I say stuff like, you're lost, you're in the wrong place, you can never get what you need here. You
Mm-hmm.
never have, you never will. We're going to help you go somewhere where you can.
It's interesting. I feel kind of a rush of sadness when you say that. The kindness with which you say that is really profound.
Yeah, they're suffering hard. The spiritists in Brazil have been working with this for 150, maybe 200 years now. And that's their view. All of these things are lost souls who
Mm-hmm.
just got in the wrong place and tried to hide inside of someone else's psyche. And they're desperate.
Right.
Another image that comes up to me is, I don't know if you've ever uh, found a wild animal that got itself trapped in something.
Mm-hmm.
If you do, be real careful when you go over there to get it free because it will rip your arm off.
For
It
sure.
doesn't know you're trying to help.
Right.
These
Totally.
things are just like that, a trapped
Mhm.
wild animal in the wrong place.
Interesting. So
So it's
then
all,
you
yeah, it's
suggest,
all kindness and asking, are you a part? And then the other really, really important thing is usually people have invited these in, or like with your client, they invited it back in,
right?
which so you have to ask questions like, check inside. Is any part of me going to miss this thing when it's gone completely? It's
Mm.
okay. It's okay. Please just be honest and direct with us.
Hmm.
And then work with all those parts until they realize this thing wasn't really good for it.
So say somebody says, yes, yes, I actually will, because this person did that. Like this has been with me my whole life. It feels necessary kind of for me to
Mhm.
get my work done. It's part of what drives me in my life. And I
Yep.
don't know who I'd be without it. I mean,
Yep.
those are some of the things that I heard.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know who I'd be without it. That's really typical. What I say is, if you were free of this being, who would you truly love to be? What would be a fulfilling, joy-filled, and profound life for you? Have you ever even had enough time to dream about that?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
that usually gets the parts going, oh. Another thing, these things are always parasites. They're feeding off the person. So
Hmm.
that the more the person or a person's part is with one of these unattached burdens, the weaker and more tired and more dependent it will feel.
Interesting.
The more a person's part is connected to self, the
Hmm.
stronger, the more independent, and the more energetic it will feel.
Hmm.
So that as soon as you can get a part to have a little tiny taste of connection to self, everything's on your side, because parts aren't stupid.
Oh, right.
They go, oh, yeah, this does feel better, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Right. Versus that kind of like squinching away and like looking away and like
Yeah,
the
all that stuff. Yeah.
squashed exhaustedness.
Yeah. So it's all
Interesting.
about, and so I've come to believe that the real turning point in this is getting a self part connection with any parts who've been trapped by these things.
Mm.
That's more important than finally getting the thing out the door.
Oh, interesting. So you
Dick
kind of
used to
for that
say,
other energy.
yeah, Dick used to say that these things always get in by promising power to the powerless.
Oh,
Like you
interesting.
think of a little kid being abused, you
Yeah.
know, they have no power. The perp has all the power. And
Right.
so some spirit comes in and so I'll make you powerful.
Um,
And
Well,
but I think there are other ways they get in, but that's probably the most common reason why parts believe they have to keep them around.
well, and that kind of leads me to the last area that I wanted to ask you about, which is what are your thoughts on the relationship between trauma? Like some spiritual traditions are like, you vibrate with that stress energy and it pulls the parasites in, like that parasitic idea. Others are like you get, your energetic field gets porous and so things come in. There's lots of different ways kind of of which, this can be related to trauma, like it's specific attached to specific entities. Or I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are about that.
Well, first of all, you brought up a super important word that's porous. I
Mm,
think the thing that Dick has explored brilliantly is the fact that mind is multiple. We are
mm,
not one thing, we're a system of multiple subpersonalities.
yeah.
That changes everything.
Hmm.
When you really start exploring how that works out. The other thing he's only begun to look at, mind is also porous.
Mm-hmm.
We are not this citadel, this fortress. We
Hmm.
are porous. We resonate, and stuff comes in and stuff goes out. And there's tons of evidence of this. It's not an original idea with me, but this is a very, very important idea. So I think that's part of it. In
Hmm.
terms of trauma specifically, I think rape usually almost literally injects these things into people,
Interesting. Uh-huh.
which is horror. I think I find that disgusting. I do not like this, but I think it's true.
Right, right. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's such a, you know, domination, right? And
yeah,
so many, if we're gonna, based on what I've heard you say, a lot of these have like a domination agenda. Not all, but
yeah. And they want to get the person to be dependent on them. I
hmm.
think it's very much the structure of addictions.
Mm.
Addictions work at first.
Yep.
Somebody who's totally shy, the first couple times they take a drink, they're going, "Oh, I can be social now. This is great."
Yeah.
But then as the addiction goes on, it goes like this.
Yeah.
More and more drinking, less and less good stuff. They're more and more dependent. They're weaker. They're more dependent, more and more isolated. Same thing with these things. They
Yeah.
promise power or something. There's this rush and then they keep the person more and more dependent, and it gets worse and worse as they become stronger and stronger parasites.
Well, and it's interesting because I study trauma a lot. And, that's kind of been what has brought me into psychedelic assisted psychotherapy in general. And, that it's, there's that concept of the like introject, right? Like object relations that like
Mhm.
internalize like negative parent, which is essentially IFS, that comes out of psychodynamic, that rolls into IFS and just this like critical, horribleness and that it's just like there's so many layers. Like, how does it relate to nervous system dysregulation? And then, what about that energetic field that your nervous system being in that state of hypervigilance, does that call that in or does it allow it to come in? And, just there's a lot of layers. It brings us into that holistic view. Like,
Yep.
is
Yep.
it really different? And, you know,
And a lot of people, they're not going to talk about unattached burdens or any of this weird stuff, but they'll talk about introjects.
right.
That's fine. That's fine. We
Well,
don't
that's
need to, we don't need to give them this other language. Interjects is fine. I want to tell you a story because it keeps
okay.
coming up. It might help
Okay.
things. This young woman in California had gone to an ayahuasca ceremony and she knew it wasn't right, but she did it anyway. And then she was driving home from the ceremony the next day. And the next thing she knew, she wakes up in a locked mental ward.
Oh.
And they tell her you were acting weird, you were driving weird, you got pulled over, you attacked the cop, you did all, and she's going, oh,
Whoa.
yeah. And then her parents come out from the Midwest to take her home. 3 or 4 times on the way back, and it's like a 2-day drive, they had to stop and re-hospitalize her because she was trying to jump out of the car, trying to strangle them, and then she'd be fine. And then these florid psychotic, they get her home, and she had a cousin or a niece or something who was psychic. And that lady said, the next time this happens, just tell that thing, I have nothing here for you but love. I have nothing here for you but love. And keep saying that as a mantra. And the woman did it, and it worked. That was the end of her florid psychotic episodes. And she came to me because I was supposed to know something and said, Bob, what happened?
Well,
Yeah. And I said, well, a lot of times these things do seem to be allergic to love. And we thought about it a little more. And she said, no, I think what it was just realizing that there could be something in my psyche that wasn't part of me, that didn't belong in me, that was so liberating. That set me free.
Interesting. I love that. So, okay. So kind of this last sort of piece, if you could change, so we're in this emerging field of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, and indigenous wisdom keepers are kind of sounding, the alarm, really, essentially, like we're taking these concepts and we're sort of opening them without appropriate containers, without appropriate learning and things like that. You've sounded some of those alarms as well. And, if you could change something about how we train the next generation of psychedelic assisted psychotherapists, like, what would it be? What would you add? What would you want people to understand? Kind of, what do people need to know? What work do they need to do? What do they need to know? It's kind of
I think they need to do a lot of their own psychedelics. And I train a lot of therapists now in how to deal with unattached burdens and guides and all this weird stuff. And the number one thing that I think is most important is they do their own inner work.
Right. Yeah.
That is the number one thing. I think the other one that's really, really big is humility. Become the student of your client.
Right.
Don't think you got this big program you're going to save them with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Become their student. Each person we meet is an endless mystery. We will never, ever know that. We just can't, but we can form a relationship with it. So forming love-based, self-to-self relationships and staying really humble.
I love that.
And not needing to know stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. That valuing not knowing, that goes against the grain of every bit of academic training I've ever had.
Right. It's true. It's true. But it's actually a really interesting inquiry. Like, how do you, continue to kind of like learn from a foundation of having learned something without, again, going to that rightness or that certainty?
Yeah. Socrates said this. I've been studying the Neoplatonists because they're very, very shamanic. We have a native Western shamanism that we have ignored. We don't have to go anywhere else to come. It's in our own history. Anyway, that's off the subject. But Socrates talked a lot about aporia, which means not knowing. And the Oracle at Delphi said Socrates is the wisest man in Greece. And he thought, that's got to be wrong. So he went around and sat with all the other people who were supposed to be wise. And he came home and he said, I know why I'm the wisest man in Greece. Because I don't know anything. So aporia, not knowing, was the first stage. If you can't get that far, you're sunk, gang. Because you're not open to new experience. You're not open to learning. So value aporia, value not knowing, and there's that classic mystical text, the Cloud of Unknowing. All of that, we've lost all of that. Now we're all supposed to be experts and blah, blah.
Excellent. Good. Well, any last pieces of advice for people who are interested in kind of, exploring, these specialty areas or psychedelics in general? Any other last pieces of advice?
I think psychedelics in general, do your own.
Yeah.
And I think having someone sit with you one-on-one is the best.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'll say, because I do this different than most people, the preparation sessions
Yeah.
should not be so much about setting intention as about getting permission from all the parts.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure all the protectors and everyone are going at least, okay, you can do this. We're willing to make that. Because if you go in there and use the medicines to blow parts out of the water, which they will very effectively do, they'll be pissed off and they'll come back and they'll kick your butt afterwards. So get everyone's permission beforehand. Go into the medicine session, trust your inner healing intelligence, and then have people who you can discuss this with afterwards and help integrate it in a good way.
Well, and I would just, kind of love to just dovetail on that and just be like, and if somebody comes to you for integration and they've had experiences, like let's just stay in curiosity.
Yep, exactly.
Let's be humble and curious. Ask a lot of questions. Be curious about what this is about.
Yep. Yep.
And then we can just support each other, I think, in being better community members. So how can people find you? They would find you through your books, right? Is there?
Yeah. And the book that most people, The Others Within Us, is the one that's all about unattached burdens. And, it's carefully researched because I know this stuff is so far out there. Most people think I'm a nut job. So there's footnotes and there's a 32-page bibliography, and I actually read all that stuff.
Right.
So it's careful.
Yeah.
I do my homework.
I appreciate that about that book. It's actually really, it's cited, it's all the things. Right?
Yeah. And to find out more, there's my website, robertfalconer.us. I've been on many, many podcasts. Also, my assistant has put together a YouTube channel with a lot of lectures and some demos and other stuff. So there's a whole lot of free material there.
Excellent. Good.
And I do supervision groups. The summer ones filled up instantly, and I'll be offering ones starting in the fall. They'll probably be announced in August sometime. And they do tend to fill up right away.
I shall watch closely because I missed this.
If you want to get one. And I keep thinking, I'll offer more.
Well, I hear people speaking very highly of them, and I'm eager to participate. So I'm very grateful to you for sharing your time. Very grateful to you for sharing your wisdom. I honor you as a wisdom holder, as a wisdom keeper, and
I want to be the fool.
You can be the fool too. I honor you as the fool, who is also a wisdom. The foolish wisdom keeper is like the best of all. Great. Well, thank you so much. Anything else you want to share?
No, thanks, Sandy.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.